Hello, everybody. You've tuned into the Indiana State Police Roadshow, brought to you by the Indiana State Police Alliance. Cops for Kids, a subsidiary of the Indiana State Police Alliance. I want to thank them for their continued support of the Indiana State Police Roadshow. I want to thank Tom Trial, the man behind the curtain here, putting us on the YouTube site. Go to the ISP YouTube site. Got new road shows each and every week, and then stuff that Tom's put on there that we're doing also through the week, old vintage stuff that Tom's got on there. So a lot of information on our YouTube site. Got a brand new guest with us today, Denise Darer. I was thinking terror because you told me terror. It rhymes with terror. And it's Darer.
Yes.
With the Indiana State Board of Animal Health. Thank you for being here with us today.
Glad to be here. Thanks, Rich.
Public information with the Indiana State Board of Animal Health. And so tell me how you got involved with the Indiana State Board of Animal Health.
Well, I used to be a livestock reporter for a farm newspaper here in Indiana and used to cover the meetings, and they posted a position for public information director, and I applied. So
how long has that been?
21 years ago. So
really?
It's been a little while, and a great place to work, great people, great boss, so doing good work, so enjoy it.
So you were writing for the newspaper like Agri-News or
it was
Farm
Indiana
World?
Agri-News.
Indiana Agri-News. Yep.
That was
Familiar
right.
with it.
Yeah,
good. Well, that's nice. That's neat that you got involved with that 21 years ago and been doing this ever since. And how large is the Indiana State Board of Animal Health? How big an organization is that now?
We have right about 100 people on our staff. Most of them are field-based. We have 4 primary missionaries. We do animal health and animal care, which takes care of our veterinary and health staff. And then our biggest portion of our staff do dairy inspection, like milk processors, dairy plants, farms, and also meat inspection. So your local meat blocker, your state-inspected meat processing facility, that the ones that handle all the county fair cows and all that type of stuff, we do the inspections there, and that's another largest part of our staff. So most of our folks are in the field, spread around the state.
So your busy time's kind of coming up here with the county fairs looming in the distance here, and 92 county fairs, I'm sure, around the state keep you guys busy.
We do. We're busy all year round, but there's a little extra that goes into county fairs and responding to questions and answers, trying to help counties work with biosecurity issues, keeping animals healthy, responding if there's any issues, and then of course when those animals eventually end up in processing, so they're in the meat plants, then we've got a little extra surveillance and that type of thing to do to make sure it's food safe.
Well,
safety. So
well, thank you for what you do, and what we're going to talk about today is animal-related laws and some of the questions that you guys get there at the Indiana State Board of Animal Health, and how you respond. So the one thing that I know a lot of people have around, we're talking big animals, cows and things, and you're talking about the processing, but you guys also work with small animals, with they call it dogs and cats and things that all people have around the state. So what kind of vaccinations are required in Indiana for a small animal like that?
Well, we do, most of what we do is with livestock, but we do work with pets and homeowners. And so when I talk about vaccinations that are required, there's the good practice and then there's what's required. So just to point out, the state only requires one vaccination for your pets, and this applies to dogs, cats, and ferrets once they turn 12 weeks of age or older. So once they hit 3 months, they need to have a current rabies vaccine. That needs to be given by a licensed and accredited veterinarian. Now, that's the legal requirement. We, of course, recommend every pet owner work with a veterinarian, have a veterinarian for their pet. They should, just like you see a doctor, or you take your kids to the doctor, you should take your pets to a veterinarian as well. And because there are other things, and work with your veterinarian of what's best for your pet, because if you travel with your pet, if you kennel your dog, there may be other things that are a good idea to keep your pet healthy.
So, and that's interesting that you said those 3 things: dog, cats, and ferrets.
Yes, ferrets too.
Really?
Yes.
Is there a large ferret population in Indiana?
Honestly, I don't think we have a good count on the ferret owners, but there's a vaccine approved for it, and it's effective for ferrets, and ferrets are susceptible to rabies, and so it's a requirement for ferrets.
Wow, that's cool. I hadn't known that. That's interesting. So, once you have that done, do you have to have your dog, cat, and ferret registered? Is there a licensing law in Indiana that you have to have them?
No, actually there's not. There used to be a dog tax, but that's what people kind of called it, the dog license, dog tax, and that's no longer a state requirement. Now, I will say, depending on what county or local municipality you live in, some of communities do have it. So,
it's like an ordinance or something that
yeah,
they enforce.
Yes. So while it's not a state law, check with your locals, check with your county clerk or animal control in your community, because there may be a dog licensing requirement or other types of laws there as well. And some of them do have a small fee with them.
Okay.
So,
but that's nothing statewide that you have to worry about.
No. So that's really going to vary from community to community. So, and sometimes it varies too what the cost may be, whether your animal's spayed or neutered or not as well. That can happen as also.
Do you guys work with the local humane societies and things on spaying and neutering, or is that totally out of your realm?
That's not really what we work with. We'll do recommendations as far as advising people where to go and give them some guidance like that, but that's outside of us.
So what's the law? What's the leash law in Indiana? I know.
Here's another one that it's not necessarily, just because it's not mandated by state law doesn't mean it's a good idea. So
right.
there really isn't particularly a state leash law on the books.
Saying that you have to keep your animal on the leash at all times.
Right. There's not. However, state law does consider dogs to be personal property. So if your pet gets loose and causes some damage or causes injury, something like that, you could be held liable for it. So the law is written that it just assumes you're going to keep control of your pet. So, but it doesn't mandate that it has to be on a 6-foot leash at all times when it's on the street or something like that. But again, that's the state level. Some communities also have specific laws, and they may have leash laws in some neighborhoods or certain communities as well. So, be sure to check with your
local ordinance again.
Right.
That may possibly have something. So does that just is that just on dogs, or is that on cats that you have to keep them on your property and all your animals that you have?
Really, the way the law is stated, dogs are specifically cited, and there's issues about livestock as well. If you own cattle,
right.
sheep, those type of things that you need to keep them off the roads. But other than that, it's not specific to other species specifically.
Okay, so chickens I know are flighty and around everywhere.
Oh yeah,
I'm sure you get calls on that. There's my neighbor's got a bunch of chickens and they come over on our place.
Yeah, and that's a challenge. It's there's it's just basically one of those things we always encourage people to be good neighbors, because it just solves a lot of problems.
Absolutely,
as much as you can. But
little higher fence, maybe a little higher chicken fence or something. Keep those wild birds, turkeys. I'm sure that you've heard about and talked about on your own property, because again, it does fall into being a good neighbor, and maybe take them some eggs.
Take some
eggs to your neighbors.
Take some eggs to that'd always be a good neighbor. So that goes a long way, I think, in a lot of the complaints that we get.
So do your dogs have to have a collar with them all the time? Is that a law that they have to have a collar with identification on them?
No, and that's not a requirement. Now, when you take your pet in to get it vaccinated, your veterinarian will generally give you a rabies tag, which we've got one on BOAH right here. They change in shape and color so that they can tell if it's up to date. But you just need to have that tag available. It doesn't necessarily have to be on the dog, because so many people now microchip their pets, which even if you do choose to use a dog collar with a tag, microchipping is a great idea, because if your pet gets separated from you for some reason or lost, it's a good way to get your pet back. And even if it loses the collar or something, we always recommend that.
Going to that point of view, is microchipping available at veterinarians' offices? They can do that right in the offices?
Most of them can, yes. And it's usually not very expensive to get that done. A lot of local animal control agencies sometimes will offer a microchip day or a vaccination day in some communities, and you can get it done at a low cost as well. So, yes.
What kind of information is on there? The homeowner's name and number, or what do they provide on that? Is there a scan number that they can go to that veterinarian and find out who that belongs to?
The chip would actually be registered to the veterinarian who put it in there. Now, they'll give you a card to the company that makes the chips and keeps the registry, and then as the pet owner, you'll need to contact them, either go online or call the 800 number, give them your name, your contact information, the pet's name, and then that way, basically, if your pet gets separated, gets picked up maybe by the animal control officer and end up at a shelter, normally most of them protocol is they'll scan the animal and check for a microchip, and then that way they can call. That's the step a lot of people forget, because they'll get the pet will be microchipped, and the best they can do is call the veterinarian, and they'll go, oh, well, that's registered to BOAH dog, and he belongs to Denise, and then get connected there. But
okay, so if they forget that part, they're going to get connected anyways.
Hopefully, if they can get hold of the veterinarian. So, and that's the other thing other people need to remember. If you move, call the number and update your information so that they've got your current phone number and address as well.
What's on the rabies information there? That little thing on there, does it give the date of it and things?
It says what it basically it'll change the color and shape of the tag. Some years it's a flower, some years it's a heart, it's an oval. It kind of is an indicator of what year.
So you guys can see line of sight maybe of
whether it's a current vaccination and that type of thing. There are vaccines available that are good for 1 year or good for 3 years.
Okay.
So people need to work with their veterinarian about what product is best for their pet. Some pets do a little better with the 1 year product versus one that's good for 3 years. So, but that it basically just has the information for the veterinary clinic that gave the vaccination.
Okay.
So again, if your pet was separated and this is on its collar, they can at least get that back to the veterinarian, and my veterinarian probably would recognize my dog.
Yeah. They usually know them, who they are. Well, again, you're listening to the Indiana State Police Roadshow, brought to you by the Indiana State Police Alliance. Cops for Kids, a subsidiary of the Indiana State Police Alliance. I've got Denise Darer. I can't get that out for some reason, Denise. Right. With the Indiana State Board of Animal Health, and we're talking about different aspects of animal laws here in Indiana. A lot of them that they get at their website. And what is your website in case people want to go and find out some more information there?
We are at in.gov/BOAH, like Board of Animal Health. So
easy thing to remember. So let's talk a little bit more about the questions that you guys get. Mistreatment of dogs. If somebody sees what they think maybe be abuse of another dog or something, what should they do?
Well, the first thing to do usually is call your local animal control agency. If your community doesn't, now not every county has animal control in Indiana. Most of them do, or most municipalities have something, whether it's a contract with a local shelter or something like that. The backup plan is called the local sheriff's office. We have veterinarians stationed around the state who do field work for us. And one of the things that they do is they work with the local law enforcement agencies, whether it's sheriff's department, city police, animal control, because frequently when they get called out to do an abuse or neglect case or something like that, maybe even animal hoarding, dog fighting, all of those type of things, the folks going out, they're law enforcement perspective, and they're looking at gathering evidence and that type of thing, but they're not necessarily animal experts. So one of our veterinarians will go out, work with them. They'll assess the health of each individual animal. They're trained to take evidence, just like any other kind of potential criminal case. Yes, and document any kind of injury, body condition. So they'll actually assess the animal, and there's a standardized body condition scoring system where they grade the animal and determine, is it too fat, is it too skinny, is it just right. They'll look for any signs of injury, illness, anything that in the environment. They'll look at the quality of their feed, if there's availability of water. All of those factors go together, and then our veterinarian will make a report, and they'll give it to the local law enforcement agency. Then that law enforcement agency will make a determination of what's next.
Okay. Would they ever confiscate an animal? Would that ever happen?
Well, our agency would not. We don't have the facilities to do that. We don't have the authority to do that either. From our perspective, we're just kind of the subject matter expert to offer veterinary advice for them. Local law enforcement or maybe the county prosecutor may make that kind of determination. If it's something that they're usually it has to be tied to the fact that the life of the animal is in imminent danger, so it needs to go right now. When we go out on cases, it's usually our goal is, and most of the time what happens is there's an economic issue, there may be a mental health issue, or it may be just lack of education or awareness. We get this a lot with people who own horses. They don't know horses are not cheap and not simple to own.
They eat a lot of hay.
They drink a lot of water. They get messy and muddy fields and pastures, and sometimes the quality of the hay isn't so great. And so a lot of times for our folks, it's a matter of educating and helping them understand what they need to do to make that animal better cared for and better health, and then we can get that taken care of, and that they can resolve it.
So you guys help them out with educating on what they need to do, and everything turns out for the better because they just don't know.
Yeah, sometimes there is court action that needs to happen, but like any criminal case, it takes time and has to go through the courts. So,
yeah. Well, Denise, thank you for being here today. We've used up our lot of time, but I've learned a lot of information here that you guys have and a lot that I didn't know. So again, your website?
IN.GOV/BOAH.
Great. Thank you, Denise, for being here today. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Rich.
Talk to you next week. The Roadshow is out.